This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch or get 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Ho, 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 ho! Santa's famous catchphrase, repurposed in this case as something that I've said. What do you guys think? Rate it.
I probably prefer when Santa says it.
Is ho, ho, ho public domain?
Almost certainly, I would say. I genuinely don't care. Well, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. But I mean, that is the mood I'm in, given the topic of today.
Well, welcome along, everybody, to the Cult Popture podcast. My name is AJ, and over here we've got Richard.
Yeah.
And over there we've got Jeremy.
Hello.
And for a rare change of setup for the three of us, it's actually Richard and I in the same room, and Jeremy somewhere else for the first time ever.
Banished to Auckland.
Yeah. And you know what? I bet most people who listen to the podcast, 80% of the time,
don't give a shit.
They don't give a shit. They don't even remember that we're not in the same room.
Yeah.
But this feels
because we stop
significant.
pointing it out every week.
Yeah.
To them, it's basically ho ho ho.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all ho ho ho, baby.
Well, the reason I said ho 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 is because we're the 3 hoes of the podcast. And today, because it's Christmassy, and because I guess people enjoyed when we did this last year, we were like, let's watch all the, Netflix drops a bunch of Christmas movies every November, December that are like Netflix originals. And last year we covered the 4 that dropped, and this year there were 6 that dropped.
Plus a TV show, which none of us watched.
No, I don't want to watch the TV show. So we watched all 6, and we're gonna discuss them today.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah,
when we said that we were going to do this, we did not know that there were going to be 6. Like there were 4 last year, and that was fine.
5 is pushing it. 6 is too many.
Yeah, and next year, I'm sure there's going to be even more.
We can't keep doing this.
Yeah, well,
this is unsustainable.
They add 2 every year.
Yeah.
So, the 6 movies are, we've got Holiday Rush, The Night Before Christmas, that's Night with a K, Let It Snow, Klaus, Holiday in the Wild, and
A Christmas Prince, the Royal Baby.
Yeah.
The 3rd Christmas Prince film, and an MVP for Cult Popture in terms of film franchises, as it's the only one that we don't restrict to our film franchise formats.
Yeah. And we also
format.
have never, AJ and I have never seen the first one.
Yeah, correct.
So I thought, because I feel like we more or less agree on the quality of the film, or like on our rankings. I feel like they wouldn't be too far off, right?
There isn't an arguable ranking of these films.
So
except Jeremy, king of arguments, is sure to argue us down.
Well, I think you're right, Richard. In terms of, last year we definitely had some very widely varying enjoyment levels of each of the movies, and this year I think that we have done. Sorry, guys, we have done a bit of off-pod chatter as we've hoed our way through these movies.
Hoed our way.
Yeah, quite. And I think, I do think that we are like a lot closer, just because I think the quality,
despite being in different
it's really
cities.
not up for debate.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And so I would like to go, let's go from worst to best.
All right, so can I do the honours of saying what I'm assuming we're all thinking?
Yeah.
Okay, so from worst to
Actually,
best.
this is interesting because I don't even have in my mind yet a solidified definite worst this year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's 2 or 3 that are definitely the worst, and then 1 or 2 that are definitely the best, and then the others kind of fall in the middle.
Well, no, there's a definite best one, and 1 or 2 that are maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah.
That are okay to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, so the inarguable definitive ranking of Netflixmas 2019 from worst to best. We start with Holiday Rush at number 6.
So then let's talk about Holiday Rush.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't want to keep going through them?
No. And then we'll reveal them as we go.
All right. Okay. All right. Holiday Rush. Jeremy, what's Holiday Rush about?
Okay, so Holiday Rush is about a DJ, a radio DJ named Rush. What was his name? His full name?
Holiday.
No. His auntie says his full name. It's like Rushiana or something like that.
Rashawn Rush Williams.
That's right. Yeah. But his nickname is Rush, and so he's an insanely popular DJ on an R&B station that has sort of gone more mainstream. And at the very beginning of the movie, his children are assholes. They're all insanely wealthy. He's a solo father, and the radio station announces that they're selling up to big corporates. They're taking it nationwide, and he and his producer, who have been together for a long time, working together, are no longer required because they are too R&B and they are not mainstream enough. And so essentially they go, oh crap, this is our money, it's just before Christmas, and they light upon the idea of buying the station that they rose up on, that they became famous on, which has just gone out of business, and trying to launch it within, I think, 8 days. I think they're 8 days away from Christmas, and they want to launch it on Christmas Day. This new radio station,
the biggest radio day of the year,
Christmas Day.
Yeah, absolutely, the day that everyone's doing nothing but listening to radio.
Everyone's on their
and also, and it's quite interesting for New Zealand watchers of this movie that actually in New Zealand it's illegal to advertise on radio and TV on Christmas Day. And one of the major plot points of this film is that they have to sell advertising to make Christmas Day feasible and to make the whole radio station feasible, and then they can't sell any advertising because no advertisers will go with them. Anyway, so they set up this radio, they set up this radio station. He has to sell his house. His son is maybe not going to Harvard anymore. His twin girls aren't getting ponies. Like basically the life of consumerism that his children have become completely in love with over their affections of their father. They no longer have any of these consumer goods. They hate it. They have to move into their old house, which is currently being lived in by their Auntie Jo, who's the sort of mystic figure who's, bringing them back to their roots. And Rush himself discovers a love with his producer, which is incredibly telegraphed from the very beginning. The children learn that life is about more than consumer things, and everyone from the radio station basically figures out that they're the bad guys, the old radio station.
My favourite love stories are when the romance comes out of nowhere. I hate it when it's telegraphed. It's very cheesy. It's very... we used this expression last year, and I don't know what other expression to use. It's very Hallmark. It's very... Yeah. It feels like you're watching a Christmas card, and I watched this movie, I think, in 4 parts because I couldn't get through it, and I had to keep coming back to it, and it was just horrific, man. Yeah. Oh, I hated it.
Yeah, because one thing you touched on there that made the movie a particularly difficult watch, I think, is that, like, the characters, especially the kids, are just such, like, assholes.
Unrealistic.
Yeah, and, like, because there's a bit where the oldest son goes missing, and then they're like real worried about him. I was like, why are you even looking for him? Who cares?
Like, he's literally out of high school. He's finished high school.
Let him fucking go.
Pretty much an adult
Christmas
now.
will be better without him.
I have a theory about this film.
Yeah.
I think this film was made to perpetuate the lie that radio DJs have that personality at all times, and it's not just they're performing for the show.
You think it was made by a radio broadcaster that was like trying to hide that?
trying to hide the fact that everyone has an on and an off, and this movie was made to be like, see, look, even when he's not on air, even when he's not performing, he still sure as hell talks like a radio host, and everyone else in the movie talks like a radio host, because they're all like, wow, what do you think about that? I think that's great. All right. And it's very like performative, and how you don't talk to people. Your broken family, distraught by the death of the matriarch of the family. You don't talk to your kids the way that he talks to them, as if they're like first time callers. And he's like, well, what do you think about moving back in to our old house and maybe not getting 2 ponies? Which is like, come up with a better thing that the little girls want than 2 ponies. Ugh.
1 pony.
I know, and that's the thing, is like you're basically asking the audience to believe that these children are so far gone that they can't possibly like have any kind of sympathy for their dad, no empathy whatsoever for their dad losing his job. And their first thought when he loses their job is like, oh, how is this going to affect me? And like particularly this oldest son, he's like, oh, I just got accepted to Harvard and you've ruined it all. And it's like, You know that he didn't choose this, right?
Yeah.
Like he did like narrate this properly to you that he lost his job by no like fault of his own.
Yeah.
And like the whole movie, basically it's like the director told him that his motivation was that he found out that his dad wanted to lose his job to prevent him from going to Harvard.
Yeah. No, and I think, look, there is some meat on the bones of those character motivations, that they resent him for losing his job, even though it's not his fault. But it's not fleshed out in a way where it's like, obviously it's because they, because they, in real life, if you were mad at your dad for losing his job around Christmas time and having to, go from your life.
Yeah, you'd be
luxury,
feeling hatred towards yourself for feeling that.
Yeah, that kind of
the
thing.
internal
exactly.
struggle of like, and realizing how selfish you feel, but then also like coming to accept the fact that it's like kind of okay to feel like that.
All great ideas, none of which are in the movie.
We've talked broadly about the movie. There are a few moments that I think deserve attention in terms of how bad they are.
Yeah.
All right.
Like, so the main character, Rush, all the way through the film, has these weird, like, internal monologue versions of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" that, like, are his own little poems to himself, where he's like making jokes, and like it's like he's thinking these things. It's an internal monologue that we can hear as the audience, and it's like, and then he always finishes them by praying to Saint Nick. Like, who prays
Santa's
to
not
Saint
real,
Nick?
dude.
Like. And the other thing is like just how bad it just shows how awful the children are, that when they go to this terrible, terrible house that they, like it's this beautiful house that could absolutely be used as the, as the dream house in any other Christmas movie.
We did all struggle with watching. I think we all took more than one try to watch this. But there is obviously a like cultural divide, and I think because Jeremy, you kind of like read a lot of subtext into this film about how it's the kids are like sort of losing their roots and their racial identity, which I didn't necessarily pick up on.
Well, I think because it's interesting that I had to look so hard to find this movie on Netflix. Like, I even searched Christmas movies, holiday movie, and like it was just like, no, Jeremy, you're white. You don't want to watch this movie. Like, so I literally had to write "Holiday Rush" in the search thing to find this movie. Yeah. And so it's really interesting to me that obviously this is a sort of a segmented movie for a different audience than me. And so I just think it was just interesting thinking about it and thinking, there's a different type of comedy. There are different cultural sort of tropes around characters and that sort of stuff that definitely like aren't part of the normal, just the normal entertainment that I consume. And so just thinking about how awful those children are at the beginning of the movie, like talking with some friends of mine who are not white, like the idea that basically children who grow up in white cultures, predominantly white cultures, who aren't, and if their parents are very successful and have lots of money and stuff like that, the idea that like children of color can become very comfortable in kind of white society, and this movie, I think in the beginning they are super comfortable and they have lots of wealth, and then the process of the movie brings them back to their old neighborhood. Their dad gets back on the R&B radio station that serves the community that they all come from. The children start to get to know the older people in this black community. It's just very much like, when I start to think about it from that perspective, it's a movie that deals in sort of tropes and stories and narratives that are probably quite prevalent in communities where people of color are living. And therefore, I just don't get it. And so this is why I'm going, this is so cheesy. Whereas, you get a person of color watching Christmas Prince Royal Baby and they're like, I cannot watch this in the same 100%. Way that...
Yeah. And whereas I think we all loved A Christmas Prince 2, the Royal Baby.
as white people.
I had no problems with it at all.
It did feel like it felt like a Medea film in a lot of ways, like the way it sort of tries to balance comedy and drama, and things like that. But having said all this, because what you are describing there, like if you just listen to that isolated from watching the film, I think you're describing quite an intelligent, well-made film.
I was going to say that as well.
But like aside from, you can say that we didn't pick up on this kind of stuff, or we don't read into it like that. It's just not a very well-made film as well. Like
for sure,
it's like from a technical standpoint, from like it drags for like
just
big
acting
parts.
wise alone. The oldest daughter is just horrible to watch.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of things like that are harder to kind of articulate on a podcast. But like if you just watch the film, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like the script is bad, the pacing is bad, and all this kind of stuff. And it is just like, because I watched like 15 minutes of it with Jess, and then she was like, can we not watch this? And so I was like, yeah, and then I just watched it before work one day.
Yeah, man, the best content on this podcast always comes from the stuff where beforehand I'm like, I don't know if we should bring this up, guys.
Yeah.
Because I was like, obviously it's a thing, okay? It's a movie that with a predominantly African-American cast. And I was like, oh God, how do we navigate this conversation about saying this is a bad movie, but also acknowledging that it's made for a completely different demographic. And those demographics do exist. And I'm not,
No, totally. But it's funny to me how like I could watch not to spoil anything, guys, but Christmas Prince Royal Baby is definitely one of the worst. Mm-hmm. But I could watch that without turning it off and having to come back to it, because it's kind of like a car crash badness that I'm like, oh my gosh. Whereas with this, I was just so didn't resonate with. I wasn't fascinated by it, and I just was like interrogating, like, why is that? And I was just like, oh right, it's because it's not the kind of like cheesiness that really is part of my cultural story.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing as well, that like again, not to spoil what we think of the remaining films, but Holiday Rush, because I think Netflix last year, especially with like the Princess Switch and like the holiday calendar, and even to a lesser extent like Christmas Chronicles, that they kind of realized, oh, people are watching these because they're quite silly, and so a lot of the on the lower end of films this year have moments or flirt with the idea of leaning into that absurdity and being like, we're in on the joke, but Holiday Rush never does that.
Yeah.
And I think it's the only one that's like you would call like a silly film or like a Hallmark film, a cheesy film that never does that.
Yeah, and if A Christmas Prince, The Royal Baby is a car crash, Jeremy, Holiday Rush is going to your exclusive Brethren Friends church food because he invited you and you don't really get it and you're pretty bored. It's like, those are the differences. But what I thought was interesting, and maybe, I don't know if you guys have much more to say about Holiday Rush, but what I thought was interesting is that last year, with the exception of Christmas Chronicles, I would say the other three were all from the same category, the same shelf at a DVD store, you know?
The Christmas shelf.
The Christmas themed shelf. This year, I felt like all these movies served a different demographic. And I'd like to maybe dissect that, or at least mention that as we go through. So this one is predominantly aimed at like an African-American audience, right? Like, say, 18 to 35, maybe a bit older than 18. And so moving on to the second worst film of the year, A Christmas Prince, The Royal Baby. Yes? Yeah. I think it is.
Oh man, it's like, because I know it's intentionally bad, I want to make it not as bad as The Night Before Christmas.
I don't think it's intentionally bad. I think you're giving a lot of credit to the filmmakers there.
Do you remember when Sherlock season 4 bombed and people were speculating that there was a hidden fourth episode?
Because why would they make it so intentionally bad?
It's so tragic. And so I think this is the second worst one, and its demographic is females who are our age. Like it's for women in their early to mid 20s, I think.
Yeah.
So basically, it's for me.
Yeah, you're part of that demographic, an honorary member.
So this one follows on our new king and queen of Aldovia.
We're much like how the Fast and Furious franchise had to really shoehorn cars into the narrative. This is now, we're like, it's not really about Christmas anymore, but it's called A Christmas Prince, so we got to do something.
So they have there's a baby on the way, and there's this treaty that needs to be signed between Aldovia. Well, they want to add the women to it, right?
There's a treaty between Aldovia and another nation that
Is it Penglia?
Yep. That they signed like 600 years ago, and every so and so many years they reunite to sign it again to maintain peace, because if the treaty is broken, then they technically are at war again.
Yeah.
Is that an accurate summation of of the film? Because Rose McIver, is that her name?
Yeah. Well, that's the actor's name.
That's the Christmas Prince.
Yeah. Queen Amber of Aldovia.
Queen Amber, because she, and along with the titular Christmas Prince, who's
now
no longer
Christmas King.
Christmas King. Because a lot of the movie is about being progressive, which is why I say it's aimed at the generation it's aimed at. One of the big reasons, anyway. Not that I
girl power, guys.
I am a progressive person, but I acknowledge that this movie is somewhat pandering.
It's too progressive.
It's not too progressive. It's just making a point of being progressive.
Yeah. Look, I'm a progressive guy, but I mean the treaty's 600 years old. There shouldn't really be women on it.
Yeah. So that's their main pull, is they want the queens to now sign the treaty as like a show of good faith, but on the day of the signing, the treaty is mysteriously vanished, and
that means that there's a curse on the baby.
Okay. So the little girl, who I think is the king's little sister,
who suddenly can walk with crutches.
What did you, Jeremy? What is
no, I'm sorry, but she's like, it's been a plot point that she's literally in a wheelchair, and it's like, and she was just like, no, there's no hope for me to ever get out of a wheelchair in the first one, and then all of a sudden it's just like, it's really inconvenient if we have to wheel her everywhere. So can we get her in crutches? That would be great.
Is it erasure as well of like
disability,
differently abled people?
Yeah.
Anyway, so she finds out that there is a curse if the treaty doesn't get
Legend
signed.
tells.
Yeah, that will specifically curse the firstborn of the current king and queen. And then, my friends, watch as this movie tries to figure out how to add more stakes, and they're like, "Oh, there's a curse," and no one in the movie really believes that it's going to do it, but it's in there because the stakes aren't high enough.
Yeah,
but everyone keeps mentioning it for no particular reason.
It is a fucking writer's or producer's note that were like, the stakes aren't high enough. That's what that is.
Yeah, and
look. Go full bore. Make it an actual curse.
Yeah, like you can see the like smoke entering her womb.
Yeah. Like it is such a like. I don't even know what else to say.
I mean, I think you're completely right. Make it an actual curse. I mean, we are living in a world where we've got two countries bumped up right next to each other, where one country is completely Anglo-Saxon, white as you can possibly get, and the other one is basically China.
Yeah.
And they barely talk to one another.
They are basically
why
China.
Not? This
and
world is
another
crazy.
show of the film being too progressive. It like changes geography. Sorry, continue, Jeremy.
Oh no, I mean, I'm just like, what? Yeah, that's the thing. Is like they say, oh, there's a curse, and then the next thing that anyone says is the queen is just like, oh no, sorcery died out years ago. We stopped believing in all that sort of thing, and like everyone is just like, oh, but there's a curse. And then in the previous scene, they're like, oh no, don't be silly, there's no curse. And then the next scene comes along, and it's really interesting because it's like every time a character hears about the curse, they're like, oh, don't worry, we don't believe in curses. But then like a new character will come into the scene. The next scene,
like,
and the person who's just heard about the curse has to tell them about the curse, and they're like, oh, by the way, there's a curse.
Yeah.
It's like there's a rule that if you're hearing about it, you don't believe it, but if you're saying it, you do.
Yeah.
But so this movie when the curse stuff starts happening, this is one of the ones that flirts with the idea of being like turning into the skid of how cheesy and ridiculous the idea of a curse is. And because you and I were watching it at the same time. I think you were like 10 minutes ahead of me, AJ.
Okay.
And so you were like, oh fuck, this movie's actually getting pretty fun.
You know, exactly. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, it's starting to get into so bad it's good territory, because if your third part of a trilogy where magic hasn't, realistically been part of it so far, suddenly introduces a curse, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, okay, yeah.
And then you're like, oh no, it's boring again.
Yeah, because they don't dive headfirst into it.
Yeah. So one thing that I just want to touch on again, even though it wasn't one of the best moments of the podcast last year, but because I hadn't seen the first film, and I was shocked to see what the actual Christmas Prince looked like that everyone had been going on about. And Jeremy, you had quite an issue with Rose McIver's hair. Was it fixed for this film?
So did you say it hasn't been fixed in this film?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Like she like the very first scene, it's this close up. Again, she's maintaining her blog, Amber's blog, while she's Queen of Aldovia.
That's hilarious. Meghan Markle dropped out of being in Suits, because she became a royal. So I doubt
and actually quite famously had to stop doing her Instagram and her actual blog because she started dating Harry.
So it's actually a regiment from royals then, right?
That's right.
It's a branding thing.
Yeah.
Well, at least if you're part of the British royalty. But Aldovia seems to have much. But the idea, the screwed up ideas around what royalty can and cannot do in this movie is insane. She's like, dear readers, we this year have done this in the government. It's like, oh, that's right. In this country, the royal family are actually the government. There is no there's no president, there's no prime minister that runs things. The royal family actually make policy decisions and are responsible for fixing poverty and the health system. And they also somehow have a huge castle with no staff. There are no staff in the whole basically you can tell how cheap this movie is because they know that they can only have two big scenes where they have extras and then for the rest of the movie it just has to be a cast of 16 people. And so to get around the fact that they can't have a bunch of people coming in and out for these big events that are happening, like the baby shower and the signing of the treaty and stuff like that, they have this snowstorm which cuts off the castle and means that the castle, only the people who were in the castle at the time of the snowstorm can be in the events of the movie. The thing is, there's 8 people in the whole movie, and I'm sorry, that castle has a staff of hundreds.
Yeah, I think you're probably forgetting how expensive Rose McIver of iZombie fame her salary is.
That's true, and also the hairdressing budget on this movie must have been outrageous.
Yeah,
and yet it still sucks.
Apparently.
The case is it Simon?
The bad guy,
Count Simon.
Yeah. He was the bad guy in the first film, yes,
and then he dramatically returns in the second.
Yeah, and becomes a good guy. What did he do in the first one, Jeremy?
So he was basically he essentially tried to overthrow the guy who has become the king, whatever his name is.
So
Richard,
pretty bad, right?
Basically treason. Essentially, he what happens is that they've discovered that Richard. Yes. This is going back a long while. But basically, Richard the king, the old king who died in the first movie. He wasn't married to Richard's mother before he had Richard, or something like that. And basically, Simon discovers this and basically tries to declare Richard illegitimate so that he, as his cousin, could become the king instead.
Okay, so that's all fine. But in another way that this series inexplicably copies the same problems as Fast and Furious, the villains from the last film are now part of the good guy crew, and in this one he's dating Amber's friend from New York, and it's very what? This guy literally tried to commit treason, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know if he's the one for me." And Amber's like, "Oh, sweetie,
my God, he's such a good guy.
You'll find out." And it's this is the bad guy. This guy, he tried to literally
killed Han.
And also another thing that I wanted to bring up is that at the end of the movie, when she has the royal baby, which is very little to do with the actual plot, her dad from New York turns up and says some hammy line, and everyone goes, "It's the dad."
Hey, I'm walking here.
Yeah, and everyone's like, "It's the dad." He's "Nah, you go." And then he goes and sees his daughter, and he holds his granddaughter, as we find out, and she says to him, "Her name is Ellery," and he's like, "You named her after Mom." And I was like, "Thank you, Dad," in this movie, because I didn't know that. And like, it's one of those. It's a classic example of like, he wouldn't say that in real life. Like, you know, your daughter hands you your baby and names her after your dead wife, and you're like, I named her dead wife's name, and he's like,
"Oh yeah,
I don't need to say why. I know why, especially with a name
he would just cry.
as unique as
he
Ellery.
would actually just cry.
Yeah.
You'd be like, "Oh, sick."
Yeah, but to be honest, if he didn't say that, I'd be like, "Why is that significant?"
Yeah.
I would just love it if he would just like, "That's a bit morbid."
Yeah, that's a bit. I'm actually offended by that.
I'm probably not gonna, because it'll bring up too many memories. I'm not gonna come visit.
Yeah.
Does she have a middle name I can use?
Yeah, it's AJ. All right, what's next on our list?
Okay, so we've got Holiday Rush, The Christmas Prince, The Royal Baby. Is it The Christmas Prince 3?
Our Christmas Prince, the Royal.
So no
Royal
3.
Baby.
Okay, next in line to the throne of better Christmas movies. This is going to be the most contentious, but I'm confident in my placing. It's The Night Before Christmas.
I disagree.
Yeah, you do disagree.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Sorry, what's the fourth one? I've
Holiday in the
forgotten. Oh no, sorry. Holiday in the Wild is definitely worse than
I'm outvoted. Let's do Holiday in the Wild.
Let's do Holiday in the Wild. Okay. So this is actually one that we knew was coming. If you listen to our most anticipated of 2019, I said, there's a new Christmas movie, Netflix. It was then called Christmas in the Wild, but then they kind of wrote Christmas out of it, but still released it in December. But that stars Rob Lowe and Kristen Davis from Sex and the City fame. And wow, what's this one about?
So in what could just be a Charlotte-centered spin-off of Sex and the City.
Which I was kind of hoping that there would be more of that sort of feel.
Well, I mean, that's why she's in the movie. It's because it's this one's demographic is mums, I think, right? Yeah. It's got your mum's hot heartthrob Rob Lowe and the gal from her favourite TV show in it. And so she
they go to the place she's always been meaning to go.
she is part of like a broken marriage. She's very rich, very privileged, part of a broken marriage, and after their son leaves for college, her husband divorces her, and so she does what I actually pitched in the Sex and the City episode of Film Franchise Fortnights should have been the plot of Sex and the City the movie. She goes on their second honeymoon without him, like by herself, which is what I said that the Sex and the City the movie should have been about. And so she goes to Africa where she meets Rob Lowe, who's like a safari guide. And they find an elephant that's its mother's been poached. That the right way to say that?
Sure.
Yeah. Just been killed by poachers.
With some hollandaise sauce.
Yeah.
And so he takes it. She's like, "I'm a vet," which I'm revealing for the first time in the movie. Yeah. And they go back to the elephant sanctuary, and she falls in love with the elephants, and she falls in love with Rob Lowe, and spends more time than she intended to.
And then it's kind of a Sophie's choice which one she's going to go with, Rob Lowe or the elephants.
But like, what's funny is the movie actually starts in August, and is like, okay, so obviously she's going to be here for a long time if it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
But
then it starts with them taking their like Christmas card photo in August.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of one of the main references to Christmas in the film.
Yeah. And she becomes involved in the community, eventually has to go back to New York to visit her friends who they call the ladies who lunch, which may as well just be the title of Sex and the City.
Yeah.
And then the last 15 minutes of the movie is a lot of stuff happens. She goes back, she gets a new job, she discovers that the job isn't fulfilling and moves back to Africa, all in like 15-minute space, where one of those things should be happening in that space. It's real funny because her decision to move back is because she just becomes a regular vet and is talking to someone who's brought their dog in for like the third time that week. And she's like, what's the matter with her? And she's like, oh, she just needs more antidepressants. And so the implication being that, no, your dog's not depressed. Can dogs be depressed? Is that
I think so, yeah.
The implication is that that's an unrealistic thing for your dog to have, that she's sick and tired of these privileged idiots with pets to look after, and she'd rather look after elephants. Yeah?
And Rob Lowe.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a good summation.
Yeah.
I just think that she realizes how depressed she is without Rob Lowe around.
Yeah, she's like, antidepressants. I need antidepressants.
And by antidepressants, I mean Rob Lowe. Yeah. Okay, so I think I know why I ranked this higher than The Night Before Christmas. And it's because, I haven't mentioned this yet, I've actually just come
I've just come back from Africa.
An hour ago, I was in the Africa of New Zealand, Blenheim, my birthplace of Blenheim. No, Blenheim is the most boring place in New Zealand. Legit, it sucks. I hate it. I was seeing family down there, and they weren't boring. They were fine. Yeah. They were fine. 5 out of 10.
They're the holiday in the wild of people.
Yeah. And I was staying at my grandfather's house who has no internet, and so I had to download this and Let It Snow beforehand. And so I watched this movie last night in a world of no internet and nothing to do. And maybe it was just like, but you know what? I was like, this is enjoyable because it's a movie.
This is better than nothing.
This is better than nothing. But half an hour before it finished...
This is better than talking to my family.
Half an hour before it finished, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation came on TV, and I found it very hard to pay attention to the
movie. Is that why you kind of skipped through the final plot summary of this?
No, I think I was trying harder to pay attention and summer, or maybe that's why I remember being a bit holiday rushed. Yeah, so maybe that's the reason. And I like Rob Lowe. He's a good presence.
I have to say the main what this movie has going for it is Rob Lowe and Kristen Davis. They are both very watchable screen presences. And everything else is what's wrong with the movie. Like, it just... Oh, man. The thing that really gets me about this movie... The thing that really gets me about this movie is that, like, every problem that pops up is almost immediately dealt with. So, like, right near the end of the movie, you've got this weird blonde South African girl who's, like, weirdly... is in a relationship with Rob Lowe, but also at the same time absolutely not in a relationship with Rob Lowe.
I think the implication is that she is the daughter of the head of the funding board for this elephant orphanage, and so getting funding was like, hey, if you bang me, I'll get you funded. I think
but it's weird because like early in the movie, Kristen Davis like leaves Rob Lowe's tent after discovering him topless, and then as she's leaving, we see this random blonde woman like walking up to the tent and looking at her like, "Ooh, you're my competition." But at no stage do we ever see her and Rob Lowe having any kind of romantic connection whatsoever. And then at the end of the movie, like towards the end of the movie, when Kristen Davis is back in New York and he's drawing a picture of her, the blonde woman comes in and basically says, "Whatever this is, it's over." And I'm like, no one knew what this was.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden the Elephant Sanctuary has no funding whatsoever. And so Kristen Davis hears about this, and there's whole movies like Sing, and like, which is all about like, hey, we've lost our funding for this really important thing that we all love. Now the community has to come together and like raise the funds for this and all this stuff. And all of it is dealt with in a 2-minute montage of Kristen Davis just walking around her ridiculously wealthy New York friends, including her ex-husband, who basically just like at the beginning of the movie drops her like a stone without any care in the world, and somehow she's able to squeeze $160,000 out of him over the course of a lunch, and he like smiles at her. It's just like so weird how this massive issue is just dealt with as not a problem at all.
I didn't want a movie about elephants and exotic locales. I wanted a movie about raising money.
No, but it was so ridiculous that like it was a problem for 2 seconds. You know, like, oh man, we got to raise money for the Elephant Sanctuary. Nope, you don't. And also, everyone still uses checks in this movie, and you can send a whole envelope full of checks across the world through like mail, and it's all good.
One thing I noticed about this movie, and Jeremy, you've watched it twice, is that correct?
Yeah.
So I would like your
I
expertise.
barely
on
watched
this.
it once.
Yeah, I'd like your expertise on this. There are two parts in this movie, two sort of throwaway lines of dialogue, where I feel like there are deleted scenes in this movie. I feel like I haven't phrased this properly. I feel like there are deleted scenes in this movie, and
You just phrased it the same way.
And another, and so when you edit out a deleted scene, you kind of have to edit out any mention of that deleted scene.
Right.
But there are two instances which I feel they mentioned something that didn't happen. And
Well, okay, so when I watched this movie again, I found like a 5-minute scene that I had no recollection of at all. So, like,
Maybe these will be
I've
related.
seen this scene that you're talking about.
okay, so the first thing I can't remember which order they happen in, but I'm going to say the first one is after she reconnects with Rob Lowe at the elephant orphanage because they find the elephant and she goes with the safari and he flies back. Yeah. He sort of mentions all the stuff that about her, like he's like, oh, you got to get back to the ladies who lunch, and she's like, oh, I told you all about that, and he's like, oh yeah, and it's like, when did she? Like it's almost like she got real drunk and spilled the beans, and she doesn't remember telling him
Because she's kind of like, oh, I can't believe
like,
it.
oh,
No,
I
she
can't believe
says
I told you that.
this is where, like, I literally watching this a second, because I have to explain why I watched this a second time. I watched this when it first came out on Netflix, like in early November, and so like 2 days
but
ago,
I
I
was
was
like, fuck,
I
it's
have
cool
no
today.
recollection. My brain has willfully scrubbed this from my memory, and so yes, when she first meets Rob Lowe and like he basically says, "Oh, you're alone, huh?" She like basically vomits out like her life story, and she's just like, "And somehow I became one of the ladies who lunch. I'm a vet, for God's sake."
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah.
There you go.
Rob Lowe's got a better memory than you.
And the other part is
It's not just
after-
elephants who don't forget. It's Rob Lowe too.
I'm the opposite of an elephant. The other part is when she first sees the blonde South African girl. Later, like when she's introduced to her, she walks away and Rob Lowe chases after her because he's like, "Oh, don't go! It's not what it looks like," or whatever. And she says to him, "I've never met someone who with 5 last names or something like that before." And it feels, and I don't know what that woman's name is, and I don't think at any point does she say like, "My name is name," because it's South African and she has 5 last names apparently.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
she's been
definitely
married
tuned
once.
out of the movie at that point, and like both times I watched it. So no.
So
Sorry.
the one scene that is not deleted, just not handled very well for me to remember it. I'm blaming the movie, not me. And one scene that is a mystery. It's a Christmas mystery.
Christmas mystery.
What a Christmas mystery? What is the blonde South African woman's 5 surnames? If that's even the line.
Maybe we'll find out in the sequel.
Oh, is there gonna be one?
No.
I hope not.
No.
But
Well, I don't know.
The other crazy thing about this movie is how, like, the casting of Kristen Davis's son is unreal to me. Like, he is
He's a small Chinese boy.
Whatever the opposite of charisma is, he is like the living embodiment of
charisma.
that. Like, I just don't understand how out of all the guys who would have auditioned for this role, he was the best person for them to cast. Like, I'm like, man, Netflix really needs to up their game in terms of their casting agents, because
Well, I guess they
Man.
just needed to make Kristen Davis look good.
I disagree. Not with Kristen Davis looking good. She's beautiful. I thought the son was actually a notably cool kid. I liked him. I thought he had charisma. And I'll die on
Wow.
this hill in this talking point I never anticipated talking about.
the other crazy thing is that like they try to make the son interesting and give him a whole life. Like, he's at college, he's doing music, he wants to, and then like he
doing
wants to drop out of
music.
college to do music. And again, this is another one of those problems that sort of rears its head. That's somehow this massive problem for a character, and then it's just all kind of done away with in one decision, which is she decides to convince him to study music at college, which is so great because that means he's still at college. And I'm like, no, that's the worst of all worlds, because now he's still doing music and won't make any money for the rest of his life, and he's going to have like a $120,000 college bill.
Very frugal of you, Jeremy. But again, that's a mum movie
Yeah.
problem and solution, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
if this was Christmas Prince and he was like, I don't want to study this at college, they'd be like, of course, sweetie, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You know, this
Yeah.
is a movie where
And he actually would be a small Chinese boy.
it is such an absurd problem to us for, you know, like, and to be honest, if I told my parents that I was dropping out of college, they probably wouldn't. Like, they'd care in a good way. Like, they'd be like, we just, you know, want to make sure that you're doing what's best for you. They would, like, there's such an like importance on going to college in America, and specifically,
It's
like,
okay, AJ. As long as you keep doing your podcast, you can do whatever you want.
sweet.
That's the thing that's going to bring you success.
Well,
One of these days.
so The Night Before Christmas then
Yep.
is the next worst one.
Yep.
That's aimed at teenage girls. That's
yeah,
Vanessa
yeah.
Hudgens. That's
Yeah.
it's not.
I think it's actually preteen.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's preteen
totally.
girls.
Yeah.
It's not smart or clever enough, or at least it's not attempting to be what A Christmas Prince is attempting to be for me to say it's also for 25-year-old women. It's
It's not winking
Yeah.
at anyone.
So, this one's essentially a spiritual sequel to A Princess Switch.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost identical in tone, stars Vanessa Hudgens, and
It's set at Christmas time.
it's set at Christmas time. What's this one about?
This one is about a knight from the 1300s
Yeah.
gets teleported to time traveled to 2019 Connecticut or wherever this takes place, and where he falls in love with Vanessa Hudgens' character. This was the first one I watched. No, it's the second one I watched actually quite a while ago, so I don't really remember it.
I actually, like, for me, this is now we've entered the I would watch it again.
Oh,
thing.
wow.
No.
Pathetic, you scum, you piece of shit.
It's cool being in the same room as you because I can see when the actual spit flying
Do you
at
miss
me.
it from when we used to record in the same room all the time?
So this is one of those, like, you have to fall in love to break the curse. But it's a fish out of water story about this knight from the 1300s adjusting to real life. So he discovers Netflix and watches Holiday in the Wild.
He does. We're not kidding.
Like all normal people. Like, you know, it's him and all of the empty nester mothers who are watching Holiday in the Wild.
Yeah.
And from that, he learns phrases like "it's lit" and "that's fire," which
Yeah.
one aren't in Holiday in the Wild, and also it's like, "Oh, honey, don't put that in your screenplay, please. This is textbook how to turn off kids."
Yeah.
No one is going to learn those features of language in a way that allows them to use them correctly
Agreed.
in like figures of speech, in conversation, in a day.
And he also learns like an American accent from that as well. Like, because
Which he really-
he
the
talks
actor
like
does that
this, and then he
for a while.
goes, "I learned phrases like it's lit."
Yeah. Okay. Fundamental issue with this film. The issue with this film. And I'm going to draw from personal experience to illustrate it better. Okay. I once made a short film. It was pretty bad. You've both seen it. I think Jeremy's seen it. It was about time travel. It was about a time travel rehab center where all these people who have involuntarily time traveled are now being rehabilitated in a rehab center.
So you're saying that the problem with this film is it doesn't have your ass in it?
This is too deep for people who haven't seen either film you're talking about.
Go and look at AJ's short film. It has his ass in it.
All right, I'll link in the show notes. But
Link
this
to my
film,
ass.
we didn't realize till after we made it, the fundamental problem with it is that we tell you these are people from other times,
Yeah.
but in waking life, in real life, and when we filmed it, they're just people in costumes.
Yeah.
And so, in our film specifically, we don't give you any indication that these actually are time-traveled people and not just crazy people. And while The Night Before Christmas does flat out show you him in the 1300s before taking him to present day,
Sent by the old crone.
it does not do a good enough job of making him look realistically like a 13th or 12th
Yeah, because
century.
he's just some fucking hot dude.
He is a cartoonish caricature of what you think of when you think of a medieval knight.
He's basically a middle, like, kind of very lax British kind of stereotype.
Yeah.
Like modern day proper British stereotype. And he's supposed to be from medieval times.
Yeah, and no one, like none of the this is such a Jeremy thing to complain about in a movie.
Yes,
Which
yes.
normally I'd take issue with because I'd regard it as like semantics and finicky and it doesn't matter. But I only say this because I think they missed an opportunity here where like he acclimatizes to 2019 very easily.
Well, because it's essentially over one night where he spends all night watching Netflix and playing with Alexa.
Yeah, and those are like the equivalent of in The Fifth Element when Lilu watches like that video that takes up to speed. Like, and you're missing an opportunity of things like 13th century English sounded nothing like what we say today. You're missing things like he's handsome and has perfect teeth and isn't dying of gout. Like, he doesn't reach 2019 and immediately dies because the bacteria is like it's like something that he has not.
So you would have preferred if he'd immediately died.
Not immediately died, but maybe Vanessa Hudgens is a nurse, or a doctor. Fuck you. Maybe she and
no. That's Christmas Prince Royal Baby. That's the woke one.
Yeah, sorry,
she's a nurse in this one.
Yeah, I'm not a regressive person. I was staying true to the regressive nature of this film. And she's like, this guy has, we can really easily fix it. And maybe that's less realistic, but still more in depth. My point is, he looks like a guy dressing up as a knight for a kid's birthday party, and eventually everyone just buys that he's a real knight, which I know he is. I know he is, but they believe
no one
him.
in the world of the film has a good reason to accept that.
Yeah. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
But I'm a sucker for like I love the first Thor movie, even though I know like most people don't, and it's the same kind of thing. Like they go to like a Denny's.
It's the scene from Thor.
It is. It's the same thing. When he loves this delicious mead, and he goes wench, another one, and everyone just like acts like he's just said the C word.
Yeah,
and like
he said the W word.
Yeah, and then everyone's like whoa shit. But and there's this quite funny thing about So she's just broken up with her and her boyfriend have just broken up when she meets this guy, and she goes, he's a bit of a douche, as the kids say. And then he's like, oh, okay, like this douche. And then he ends up borrowing some of his clothes, some of the ex-boyfriend's clothes. And then they see him at the Denny's and like, oh, that's my ex-boyfriend. He's like, oh, I shall thank the douche. And that was my favorite. I actually fucking cracked up with that. But
I took issue with...
We get you loved this shitty movie, okay?
I took issue with Vanessa Hudgens saying douche, as the kids say, which is something that the kids haven't said for about 10
about
years.
30 years.
And you feel you in that moment you feel the 47-year-old in the writer's room like trying to write lines to put into Vanessa Hudgens' mouth.
But like this is the best example of a film being like, oh, people liked the Princess Switch because it was ridiculous, and so we'll add a supernatural element to it, and we'll just make the film fucking stupid. And next year, we're getting the Princess Switch switched again, starring Vanessa Hudgens, Vanessa Hudgens, and Vanessa Hudgens.
He's not kidding. We are.
It's three. It's the Prince and the Pauper with an plot outline. Now with an extra person. Never been done before.
And as two guys who watch so many franchises, probably 10% of which do a Princess and the Pauper story, we've never done three ways before. I'm so excited.
Wow, just watching you guys kind of melt down in a way that's very unstable is quite... I'm glad I'm not in the same room as you for once.
But I do... you're normally not... Oh, that's cute. But like I do love the idea of it being an annual tradition to have Vanessa Hudgens in a Christmas film with increasingly ridiculous premises.
Which, we spitballed this, didn't we?
Yeah.
And what I suggested was Vanessa Hudgens switches bodies with baby Jesus in a movie that combines the concept of time travel with Prince and the Pauper.
Yeah.
And she body swaps with the baby Jesus, and it's called Away in a Stranger.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
That's fucking... I love that. That's the greatest thing I've ever heard. But like...
she looks in the mirror and she's like, I'm Jesus! Oh, no!
Sorry, Jeremy, are you still there?
Yeah.
You just weren't reacting to any of our hilarity.
I'm just not laughing at anything.
But yeah, because the movie ends in kind of a weird place where the knight ends up coming back to the future, right? But then there's also like his knight friend from the 1300s. There's something weird
His
with
brother.
him, right? Sorry, his brother. Yeah,
His brother.
His night brother.
yeah, his knight brother. What happens with him? Does he gets knighted or something, right?
Oh,
It's his knighting. It's the day that he's about to become knighted or something like that. But I do think
It
that
does
this
set
is
itself up for a
setting
sequel.
it's setting up for a crossover with A Christmas Prince, I think.
Well, yeah, because her parents are in Aldovia in the film.
Yeah.
they
And
mention
also,
Aldovia.
I think
Yeah.
that the timing in the 1300s,
a
it's
clue.
interesting that it's just before
Ooh,
the
treaty.
treaty signing.
Oh, fuck. We're
Fuck
going
yes.
too deep.
Oh
No
my
other
God.
podcast is discussing this.
I fucking would love a Netflixmas shared universe.
Yeah.
That'd be fucking
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, the crazy thing about this Night Before Christmas thing is
How good it
beyond
is.
everything that's insane about Vanessa Hudgens' life, in that one, she lives in this enormous house that has a guest house because both of her parents have just recently died, and her sister, who has a husband and child, didn't really bother to split the estate with her. It's just just keep living in that enormous house with a guest house. Why not? And also the fact that she eats muffins by picking at them with her fingers
it's
and not
quirky
actually
and
eating
cute.
the muffin. The crazy thing is that the old crone
Who
sends him to the
teleports- yeah, okay.
sends him to the future with the sense that he has to find his destiny in order to get back to the past.
Yeah.
But finding his destiny is finding out that he is going to fall in love with a woman from the future and need to stay there. And so then as soon as he comes back to the past, he's like, no, I want to go back to the future again.
I wish my destiny was to fall in love with Vanessa Hudgens.
Hell yeah.
I wish that was what I was destined to do. It was my fate, and I could not escape it no matter how hard I tried.
Imagine if you believe in there being only one person for each person.
Yeah.
And this movie's you could live 700 years apart. There's not always going to be an old crone.
No, that's true.
Well, I think this movie proves there will be an old crone. But AJ, I mean, not everyone can be an absolutely forgettably vanilla-looking English-speaking man.
I would
honestly.
I would trade
what is
my
the
life
deal?
to be
What
that.
is the deal though with the Netflix casting of men this year? All of them are just Vanessa Hudgens, super hot. Why could they not hire someone who was of an equivalent kind of star power or star factor? He has again
Because they waste all their
he's
money
so
on Vanessa
forgettable.
Hudgens.
It's sexist, frankly. It's the idea that you don't have to be as, if you want a hot wife, you don't have to put
You
in
just
the
have to
hard
be a knight
yards.
from the 1300s.
Yeah. And you know what? She thinks he's real hot. Ask him what he thinks of homosexuality. Ask him what he thinks of black people.
Yeah.
This guy is going to be super problematic.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, I'm not even kidding. Of course he will be.
Yeah. But then, put him in Aldovia, ask what he thinks.
Oh, be careful. All right.
The other thing I have to say about Night Before Christmas is it's actually one of the three movies that I felt was really strange this year, where three of these movies have had countdowns to Christmas or Christmas Eve on the screen.
Yes.
So it's this is the number of days. And it was so, and the first one I watched that had it in it was Night Before Christmas. And I was like, oh yeah, obviously
wanna
we're
know how
counting
many
down
days till
to
Christmas
Christmas
is.
Eve because that's when he has to have done his, but then Christmas Prince also has a countdown to Christmas Eve because that's the time when they have
curse
to
will
have
take
signed
effect.
the contract. And then bloody Holiday Rush also. I mean, Holiday Rush doesn't have the kind of, or it does have the stakes because they're going to be launching their radio station on Christmas
The
Day.
stakes in Holiday Rush are very convoluted and I didn't understand them. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, well, it's just it's so, like you said before, AJ, about the producer's note of we need greater stakes. It's we need something on the screen at the beginning of every day in the movie to remind us that there's this countdown of the thing that needs to happen.
Yeah.
It's just super
100%.
cheap and I hate it. It's so awful.
Yeah. I hate it too, dude.
Also, with Night Before Christmas, seriously, this Christmas Eve dinner that it's just they needed something in the movie to get everyone together, and so she's got this thing where, oh yeah, my mum and dad did this Christmas Eve dinner thing where they invited people who were in need around to give them Christmas, and somehow over the years that's morphed into a paid sit down dinner for the entire town.
And Vanessa Hudgens, I watched this with my flatmate, and when this scene comes up, she was like, why is Vanessa Hudgens so well dressed up and everyone else is wearing a cardigan and jeans? and Vanessa Hudgens is in like this like insane dress, and no one else is like dressed anywhere
Well,
near
she
the
knows
same.
she knows that she's going to kiss for the first time that night.
Oh,
Hell yeah.
a kiss.
I guess. All right.
A kiss?
So
Also, there's
Now-
only one poor family in the entire town, and I just loved that so much.
Yeah, fuck him.
yeah, fuck them. We don't need to talk about them. If they wanted to be talked about, they'd have money. All right. So now there's like 2 films left.
Yeah.
So we'll go what's second place, and then those who are paying attention to the start might be able to work out what number 1 is.
So second place is Let It Snow.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this is actually based. I just found out this is based on a book.
A John Green novel.
Yeah, well, it's
collaborated.
It's called Let It Snow: 3 Holiday Romances, and it's 3 intertwining stories all written by different authors, one of whom is John Green.
And so this demographic is teenagers. It's
Yeah.
about teenagers. It's
By teenagers, 14.
14. So this one, I watched this also in Blenheim at my grandfather's
Yeah.
house with no internet. Loved it.
Yeah.
Like, I was expecting. I had no idea what this movie was. I loved it. It's not the best well-made movie. Like it is.
Yeah.
It's a Netflix movie.
Yeah.
But it's lovely. It's very wholesome. It's very sweet. It's Love Actually in small town USA. There's a bit of swearing in it.
Yeah.
There's a bit of
Ooh.
sex jokes in it.
Yep.
It's a good fun movie. It stars bankable stars. It's
Well,
got
yeah, like of that age, because it's got
Sabrina the Teenage Witch, or some
Yeah,
chilling
yeah.
adventures of Sabrina.
it's got Shamik Moore, who was the voice of Miles in Into the Spider-Verse, and then
Right.
it also has
Yes. Yeah. Oh, cool. Yes, totally. It is. Yeah.
and then it also has Ned from the
Spider-Man.
from the Spider-Man,
other
the
Spider-Man.
MCU, who's Jagged Battlon, and then it's also got Isabella Mona. Is
Mhm.
it she in it? No, she's not. Never
It's
mind.
got Ray William Johnson's ex-girlfriend in it.
And it's got Joan Cusack as the
Teen
It does have Isabella Mona.
heartthrob Joan Cusack.
Yeah, Isabella Mona, who's the
and Ladybird.
huh?
There's the popular girl from Ladybird is the one who's obsessed with her phone.
Oh yeah, no, I mean she's the one that's she's Dora the Explorer.
Oh,
Isabella Mona. Liz.
of course.
Yeah.
Have you talked about
Sorry?
is it Karen Chilpka?
That's Sabrina, right?
Yeah, the girl, or she's also
Yeah.
she was the little girl from Mad Men.
Oh, she nice.
Oh, nice. Yeah, man. What did you guys think? I thought this was
this is a
sweet
really
movie.
nice film.
Yeah.
It is. This is the kind of film that I would love my kids to watch.
Yeah.
You know, like with the kind of shit like Netflix movies that come out, if I had a teenage kid who wanted to watch one of these, this is like it's wholesome, and you would be quite happy for your kid to learn values from this film, you know, rather than like The Night Before Christmas.
Yeah, and so I don't think we see what it's about. It follows as the book title suggests. It follows 3 separate love stories. They're all kind of connected because they're all friends, or they're all mutual
like,
friends.
it's similar to Love Actually, where they
in this little town in the middle of America. It's on Christmas Eve, and there's a party happening at a Waffle House. And one of what are the love stories? There's a guy who's been pining after his best friend his whole life. There's
a famous guy who's coming through town.
Yeah, there's a Justin Bieber analog who's played by that's the guy
The
from
Shamik Moore,
and he, their train gets stopped because of the snow, and so
he falls in love with Dora the Explorer.
falls in love with Dora the Explorer, and the other one is
I mean, who hasn't?
the other one is a girl who had a fling with another girl, and they're kind of from other sides of the high school clique spectrum, and so they meet up again at the Waffle House, and there's a bit of like, oh, it doesn't seem like she likes me anymore, but she actually does, etc., etc.
And then Joan Cusack's kind of like the Rowan Atkinson of this film.
And it all culminates in a party that what's his face, Ned from Spider-Man is like an
Jacob,
aspiring DJ, and he wants to like have a party where he DJs, and he can't do it at his house because his parents were supposed to go away, but they ended up not going away. So he ends up having a party that
Possibly
night
to
at the
Adobe,
Waffle House, which is kind of the culmination of where all these stories end up meeting at the end of the movie.
Yeah. And there's some great jokes in it. There's one part where they're trying to get their car started, and he's like, "Come on, get your sweet ass working." It's like, "Yeah, back that ass up." And then the guy in the back's like, "Guys, I know it's just a car, but I'm actually a feminist." What a great line! Hilarious.
He should come on this podcast.
Yeah, join us, other feminists.
Yeah. We'll move to Aldovia.
We moved to Aldovia, which is like, the opposite of what the UK is now. Topical UK election
humor.
And so what else? Oh, my favourite scene in this film is actually there's two scenes I really loved. One is when they go into this like seemingly abandoned church and they play. I've never heard the song. They're called like "You Saw the Whole of the Moon" or something on piano, and they sing along to it. It's very sweet.
Yeah. On the organ.
Cute. On the organ, yeah, true. And the other one is when the Justin Bieber analog and Dora the Explorer go back, a tale as old as time, go back to her house where her grandfather, knows that this guy's a musician, but doesn't know what kind of musician he is.
Yeah.
And he talks about like who is this? Is it the Rolling Stones guy?
Mick Jagger?
His favourite Mick Jagger song, and the Justin Bieber analog is like, that one's all right, but I prefer this one. And then they put on Mick Jagger song. Is it Mick Jagger or just Rolling Stones?
They do talk about Mick Jagger, but I think it's Rolling Stones.
And then they do impressions of him dancing. Yeah. It's very fun.
Which is also very topical because fucking everyone seems to be asking young celebrities if they've heard of this person, and there's this obnoxious fucking bullshit that seems to be happening every week. But yeah, it is like it's just such a nice movie.
I'll watch this again.
Yeah.
It is charming. It is charming as all hell, and I really, really enjoyed it.
This is the kind of movie that AJ tells me he's going to show his sister.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
I expected to feel like. I mean, I'm 34 now, guys. I have my own child. What the heck? And so,
we haven't mentioned that. Is that canon on the podcast? You had your baby.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it a while ago in a podcast.
Well, you mentioned you were having a baby.
I was listening at home, and I was like, "Ooh, here I am on the podcast without being on the podcast."
That's right.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, so don't go on about it because we have mentioned it.
We get it. You have a baby.
But yeah, I mean, like being so far away from this stage of life, the teen stage of life, I expected this movie not to resonate with me as much, and I just freaking loved it. I loved spending time with these characters. I loved being in this little small town. I thought it had real heart. Like the scene, it's so interesting. I totally loved both of the scenes that you mentioned, AJ, and I particularly loved the scene with when they go back to Dora the Explorer's house. Oh gosh, sorry. Whatever's going on
Find
in my neighborhood. But anyway, they go back to Dora the Explorer's house, and just the tension that's there with both of them not really saying what they really want or what they really think. And as the audience, that beautiful tension of knowing that both of them are actually really good-hearted and totally in it for the right reasons, but they aren't at that point of trust yet. And actually just sitting in that for a while, it's just movie magic. And I just loved it. It was great.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, this is a great this is the first great Zoomer movie that I've seen.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah,
this is the first movie that's completely. I actually know 8th grade would be probably.
True.
Yeah. But it's that similar kind of thing.
8th grade is about 10 times as good as.
But yeah, it like encapsulates that, and it's like it's a common. Yeah, it's a tried and true framework of a film, essentially. Like,
well, I would draw a direct line between 10 Things I Had About You and this. So, like, this is the 10 Things I Had About You for the Zoomer generation.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah,
like it's got heart, it's got humor, it's got like
John
kind
Cusack.
of angst, but then it's got a resolution that feels genuine to the teen experience rather than just cheesy.
Yeah. What do you guys think of Joan Cusack?
I freaking loved her.
Yeah.
Sick. Yeah, it was such a fun character to bring into the world of like.
Yeah,
you know,
if you're wondering how she fits into the film as well, like it is very similar to Rowan Atkinson in Love Actually, I think. That
Right.
it's just pops up and is kind of wacky.
She's like a snow. What's that called? Like she shovels snow with her truck. Snow
Mr. Plow.
She's Mr. Plow,
Yeah.
but she mysteriously wears tinfoil all over her outfit, and no one knows why, and she won't tell anyone why.
Yeah.
And she narrates the film.
She's kind of a
and ends
weird, she's a
yeah.
weird conspiracy theorist kind of boomer representative in the movie,
Yeah.
even though
It
she's
was
not actually a
funny,
boomer.
watching the film and frustrating me because I couldn't quite work out who the narration was, and then she popped up. I was like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, look, I would be like, this is far and away the best Netflix Christmas
Well,
movie.
like this is so much better than anything last year.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd be like, this is great. This is the peak. This is what all Netflix Christmas movies should aspire to be. But the next movie, the best movie of this year's Netflix 2019, is so good. It just feels so fucking stupid to even be mentioning it on this podcast with the rest of these movies. And that is, of course, Klaus, the beautifully animated, like Christmas.
I just got chills.
legend.
I just got chills.
Like,
Like,
guys.
fucking hell. So this was the first one I think all of us watched, right?
Yeah. Which, and after that, it was like, it's going to be a long year, like a Netflix.
So this is directed by the guy that created Sergio Pablos, who created Despicable Me, and it's like, this is one of those, if you haven't seen it, stop what you're doing, go and watch the film. This film is so fucking good.
Yeah.
We talked about how good Let It Snow is, but that was like, I think when we were talking about Let It Snow, it's like, yeah, we liked it, but we're talking about it being good by Netflix Christmas standards.
And also no internet and Blenheim standards.
Klaus is a fucking gorgeous film. It's like, so it's animated, it's a tale of the creation of Christmas, essentially. So it's about a
Santa's origin story.
Yeah, it is a Santa's origin story. So it's this postmaster, this heir to this like postal fortune, who's the spoiled brat, essentially gets told, you have to go start a post office in the town of Smeerensburg,
Which island? The island
based on a real place.
On a real place. The island of Smeerensburg, where and you have to, what is it, 1,000 letters in a year,
something like that,
some arbitrary number that he has to achieve. 3,000 letters, and to create a post office to show that you're worthy of it. He's voiced by Jason Schwartzman of Phantom Planet. He's the drummer for Phantom Planet. Do you know that? Yeah.
I don't even know what Phantom Planet is.
We've been in the sun, driving, looking over California. Here we come. Yeah. And then he essentially gets the idea to tell kids that if they write a letter, you'll get something in exchange. And so he ends up teaming up with this big burly woodsman he finds in the forest called Klaus, who's got a big white beard and is voiced by J.K. Simmons. And how fucking good is Netflix at casting Santa? With Kurt Russell and J.K. Simmons. But they team up. He's made all these toys, and then they essentially create the legend of Santa Claus.
And you see, it's the same way that like when a comic book movie gets upgraded to the big screen, they have to find like movie realistic ways of mentioning their superhero name.
Yeah,
like his, what did they call you down at the precinct? Oh, they called me Two-Face.
Yeah,
and
so like things like he laughs like ho, ho,
yeah,
ho, and they're like, is that really how you laugh?
Yeah,
and there's a bit where they travel in like a reindeer drawn sleigh, and there's a bit where they like end up going over some kind of ramp and someone sees them out the window flying, and then that's how this myth is created. But it ends up,
and elves are small Russian Orthodox.
Yeah. So it's an actual
what'd you say?
The Sami people.
Yeah, Sami. That's the word. And
so they team up and become his elves.
Yeah, it's actually like an actual language that's essentially dying or almost dead. And there's the main elf, who's voiced by a little girl who didn't speak any English, and then the process of directing her was similar to the relationship she has with the main character, of like this kind of trying to find a mutual language.
Clearly your favourite one because it's the only one you've done behind the scenes research.
So and I found that this actually the first trailer for this came out in 2015, January 2015.
What the hell?
And it was a completely different character voices and everything like that. It was essentially shown as a proof of concept because you kind of need to go look at the trailer for this film or something to see the way it's animated, because it's similar to
Into the
Spider-Verse, where it's that kind of like 2.5D. It looks
I think it's
very
a frame
3D
rate
animated.
thing more than anything else.
but it's also the character models and everything like that. But the whole film is hand animated.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's beautiful. It's like it's one of the most beautifully animated films I've ever seen, and it's. And there's a whole subplot as well to this film that Smearensburg, essentially the reason there's no postal service there is because the town is divided into two families who hate each
Forgot all
other.
about the Joan Cusack's in that one as well.
And so it's this big feud between two families, but then the kids all start hanging out with each other because now they've got all these toys, and the parent and the
That's right. Yeah, I watched this a month ago. So
and also in order to write letters to Klaus to ask for toys, they have to learn how to write. And so the teacher who's on the island, who basically had no students because the kids weren't allowed to learn in the same school as the other kids from the other side of the town. She was basically using the schoolhouse as like a fishmonger, and then basically, and she was saving up money to leave because she hated it so much. And then basically, because of the sort of selfish actions of the main guy, the postmaster guy, he all the kids want to learn how to read and write, and so then she has to start teaching again. She redevelops her love of teaching, and it's just so beautiful. Like, I loved the one thing I loved at this movie is that every character does things because of who they are, and there's a natural flow on that comes out of the depth of that character's motivations, and it impacts the other characters in a way that actually makes a difference and means something. And it's just so beautiful to see a movie that's so well made with characters that are so well designed and so well written in a way that's going to make sense with each other.
And this is one as well. I don't want to spoil where the film goes, but the film's ending and everything like that, and how it ties into like the myth of Santa Claus is beautiful.
It echoes Prince of Egypt for me, like in that level of like this really like stuff that's a cartoon that is made to be awe-inspiring and beautiful and not funny.
That word awe is absolutely like appropriate. That's the word that came to mind as well. Is that like there are moments in this where you just go, like it's I cried. It's so good.
I was getting teary-eyed. I after watching this, I was at work the next day, and I was telling people about, I watched this movie, Klaus, on Netflix. I was like, it's real good. And then and I was like talking about, like, it's actually real good. You need it. You should watch it. And then one of them went home that night to prove me wrong and watched it, and then came back to work the next day and was like, yeah, fuck, that's real good.
Yeah.
And so, like, this is not only like the best Netflix Christmas movie this year, this is one of my favorite films of the year. And if this won Best Animated Feature, I probably won't even be nominated. If this won Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah, no, totally.
I maintain, this is how I've been describing to people, is that like, if this came out in the 90s and was released by Disney and had Disney behind it, this would be like inarguably one of, if not the greatest Christmas films of all time.
It's in the same way that they pulled in other into like not what's the opposite, public domain properties like Tarzan and Cinderella. This is Disney's Santa Claus movie, you know. But even though it's not Disney,
it just has that same richness, and like it would be looked back on in the same way Aladdin and The Lion King are, and it would be like, because, you know, at the moment it's like, what are the greatest Christmas films of all time? You've got, you know, It's a Wonderful Life, Die Hard, G-Action, and then Love Actually, which I think Christmases are numbered.
That movie is the opposite of The Christmas Prince.
Yeah. Like Love Actually, within the next 10 years, isn't going to be looked on as fondly.
People already criticize
it. Yeah, people are, and it's going to get to the point where that's the majority, I think. Or they're like, it's not, they don't play it as much anymore. But, like, please go watch Klaus. Like, we need to make this a Christmas classic.
This is definitely going to become Christmas canon. Like, in the
but that's
sort
the thing,
of
like so many films get dumped onto Netflix now that people associate Netflix with
they'll never say
forgettable,
no.
and I'll never get around to watching it. Like, this should be beloved.
Yeah. One thing that I really liked about it as well is that the villains in the film, which are like the heads of these warring factions within the town, their motivation after everyone starts coming together and you know, finding out that there's no reason to hate each other, their motivation is to reignite the feud because that's tradition. And that's it. That's their only motivation. And I was like, how good is that? That's so 2019. That's the real progressive film. And I'm not even using that in like a pejorative, I think it's genuinely like, this is the type of progressive that A Christmas Prince wishes it was, like making their villains be like, no, we have to uphold tradition because that's always been, and versus new characters who are like wanting to buck the trends of traditions, or something I've discovered I'm very passionate about. So like it was really awesome to see.
That's genuinely like one of the things I did not like about the movie.
What do you mean?
Oh, I just that's the whole narrative that like everything that's traditional and everything that like has been done. I mean, I completely agree that things that are like horrible that should be continued because they're tradition. That's no reason to continue things. But it was just the narrative that like anything that's traditional is probably going to be dumb, and we should just do everything new and pretend that like anything new is great.
I think the message of the film is more, don't be afraid to get rid of those nasty traditions.
Yeah,
totally.
or to create new ones.
Yeah.
Like, oh fuck, man. I love this film so much.
When they unveil the story, like the true story of the woodcutter's life, it was like absolutely devastating. And like this is one thing that like talking to some parents, like they have actually said that it's a little bit inappropriate for really young kids because their kids got super upset about that sort of stuff. And it's just like, because it is such a beautiful movie and it's cartoon, so I think people think that it's like, oh, this is really fun and it's like cute little fun Christmas movie, and it's actually like it plays around with some pretty huge stuff, but man, that scene is so powerful.
Yeah. Hunchback of Notre Dame has a song about how the priest wants to fuck the gypsy, though. So
like and how he wants to fuck them so bad that he wants to kill them.
Yeah, but we're not sitting here advocating everyone goes and watches that.
But and finally, Sergio Pablos actually worked on Hunchback of Notre Dame.
But my point being is that the best kids movies are a little bit inappropriate for kids.
And also, AJ and I have talked a lot on the podcast recently about films being Santatheist or not, and the whole like. It's essentially the idea whether or not a film actually treats, there's a man who lives at the North Pole who delivers presents or to everyone in the world one night a year, or if, it's like in real...
Whether Santa's real or not.
Yeah. This film treats that beautifully, I think. Like, yeah. I mean, again,
This is the book of Genesis of Santa.
Yeah. Sure. So, I mean...
Or is this film Santa-agnostic? Is that what you say?
I think maybe that's the thing, that it's Santa-agnostic.
So I just want to bring you guys, because we're talking about how this movie is like the new Christmas classic from Netflix, just want to bring you guys back to last year when you were claiming that Christmas Chronicles was going to be the new Christmas classic from Netflix.
I was so wrong, Jeremy. You were so right.
Oh my god, Jeremy. Oh my god.
Oh man, I can go to bed. I can go to bed tonight happy. Like that's all I wanted.
No,
Thanks,
Christmas
guys.
Chronicles is pretty good. Like Christmas Chronicles
was the Let It Snow of last year.
This
is an unprecedented margin, Klaus's, for Netflix.
Well, it's like and I'm nothing against these films, but like Christmas Chronicles is Netflix's Elf. But Klaus is Netflix's It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong with Elf, but it's like, it's It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And also, glad you brought that up because there is a Christmas Chronicles 2 coming next year. Goldie, there's recently announced that Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell are definitely gonna be back. I think it's next year. It might be 2021 actually. So, but Christopher Columbus is directing that one as well.
Oh well, he should have directed the first one.
Yeah, well, he produced the first.
That's
one,
the missing element from.
Yeah, so that'll be really interesting. And then we are getting Princess Switch switched again. There's no word on it. I just read a thing that was like, when you ask Google a question or you like type a thing into Google and it comes up with like common questions and then you can like click and reveal the answer. And it's like, is there a Christmas Prince 4? And it's like, there's currently no word on one, but if there is, it'll probably come out in December.
Wow.
Truly the crappy IMDb trivia of future movies.
Yeah.
Well, hey, look, this has been wonderful discussing Christmas movies. As unfeasible as I think it is to continue doing this every year, the batch we got this year was much better. Demographics, didn't mention the demographic for Klaus. It's a family movie.
Yes, for fucking everyone.
Yeah, family movie. And
Everyone
so
with a
at the
heart.
very least, I can
Yeah.
appreciate and respect the fact that this year they gave us a smorgasbord as opposed to the same thing four times, basically. Which isn't exactly what happened last year, but more or less. So any final thoughts? I shouldn't have said that. You're all going to keep talking. We need to wrap this up. It's Christmas.
Yeah. We've got Christmas to have. I don't know.
We've got Christmas. So thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Yeah, congrats on having a baby, Jeremy.
Congrats, Jeremy.
Thanks, guys.
Its name is Jesus. We
We don't know who the father is.
We hope you all have a Merry Christmas. We do have one more Christmas episode coming out for the year, which will be our live show.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting.
If you're in Christchurch tonight.
Go see it tonight. We're doing it tonight at Little Andromeda at 7:30. Talking about the Santa Claus trilogy. Anyway, other than that,
Watch Klaus.
Go watch Klaus. And also, even more important than going to watch Klaus is going and subscribing to Popture on all your local social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and Acast. Twitter, that sort of thing.
The common social media platform, Acast.
Yeah, popular. I should have said that. They're not going to listen this far into it. We also we have a new YouTube channel for the podcast now. So this episode will actually come out on YouTube on the podcast channel. So go check that out. Please subscribe to it. Looking forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Ho, 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 goodbye. Those words don't melt into each other.
No, they don't.
There's a hard G. There's a hard G there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bye.
And to all a good night. That's what you say.
Yes.